Hello recruit, and welcome to an Astroneer Academy Extra that continues the study of rails that we began in our previous course. Last time, we discussed creating a railway using rail posts and junctions, and how those also allow you to extend oxygen and power. These are great features, but without some vehicles on those rail lines, all we have really created is an advanced tether line. So today, we will investigate the various vehicles you can use with your railway. Let's get started. Before we get into today's topic, however, I need to backtrack to our previous course for a moment. As we discussed rail post and rail junction bundles, I failed to point out that each bundle has a visual indicator to help you identify how many items are remaining in each bundle. This green indicator appears as a full bar that will slowly diminish in size as you remove individual rail posts or rail junctions from their bundle. I apologize for the oversight, and now we can get on to today's topic. The most basic railway vehicle is the railcar, which you can unlock in the research catalog for 1,500 bytes. It is created on the medium printer from 2 resin and 1 aluminum. When unpacked, it features a single large Tier 3 storage slot and a coupler on each end. Similar to other vehicles, railcars will provide oxygen when you are nearby, even if it is sitting on the ground or on top of a rail segment that is not connected to an oxygenator. To attach a railcar to your rail line, pick up the railcar and place it on the rail line. It will snap into place when you have it positioned properly over the rail line. If you place additional rail vehicles atop the rail line in close proximity to another vehicle, they will automatically connect together, forming a train. If you have hopes of creating a super long train that reaches from horizon to horizon, well, I have bad news. The maximum length for a train is 6 vehicles. Rail vehicles can be added to either end of the train as long as the vehicle on that end has an available coupler. Once you have a train of 3 or more rail vehicles, you can only remove the vehicles at either end of the train. That means you cannot pick up and remove a rail car that is situated somewhere between the 2 end rail vehicles. You'll have to remove the other rail vehicles first until the rail car you want to remove becomes an end vehicle. Rail cars can move without a rail engine. If you interact with any rail car in a train, you will find a control input indicated as Start. Selecting that input will cause the railcar to begin moving. If you look closely at the rail segment while you're interacting with the railcar, you will discover bright green arrows indicating the direction the railcar will travel. In this current state, there is no way to choose which direction the railcar will travel. If you want it to move in the opposite direction, you'll need to pick up the railcar and rotate it around. Once underway, a railcar will continue moving down the rail line until it reaches the end of the line. It will also stop if it reaches a junction that is facing a direction that prevents the railcar from continuing to travel down the rail. The same control input used to start a railcar can also be used to stop a moving one. By utilizing a storage sensor, you can even automate the movement of a railcar. Simply attach the storage sensor to any portion of the railcar other than a storage slot, set the sensor to its full or empty status, then connect the sensor's target pin back to the railcar. In this configuration, the railcar will begin moving when its attached storage is completely full, and once it reaches its destination, can automatically return once its attached storage is completely empty. Granted, the railcars don't really move all that fast, but there are rail engines that can speed things up. A rail car, along with other rail vehicles, cannot cross a rail segment that already contains a rail vehicle that is not a part of its train. If you attempt to start a rail car and there is another rail car on the segment already, it will not move. If the rail car reaches a segment containing another rail vehicle, it will emit a warning tone and its power indicator rings will slowly flash green. If this happens, you can use that same control input to start the railcar again, but in the reverse direction. If the other rail vehicle that was blocking the rail segment is removed or has traveled on to a different rail segment, the railcar will resume moving in the original direction of travel. If you use the call nearest car function of a rail post, the rail car will emit what might be the most satisfying toy train horn sound imaginable. You will also hear a sound reminiscent of warning chimes found in railroad crossings. While the rail car is traveling to the rail post it was called from, the power indicator rings on the side will function much like the indicator rings on the rail posts, indicating how much farther the rail car must travel to reach its destination. When the rail car reaches the rail post from which it was called, it will emit a pleasant tone to signal its journey is complete. All of this automatic movement is great, but what everyone really wants to do is drive the train by themselves. Good news, all you need to drive a rail car is a rover seat or a gravity globe. Attach one of those to the storage on the rail car, and you can use the same forward and reverse controls that you would typically use when driving a rover. Once a train is underway, you can stop it by using the opposite control you used to start it. Rail vehicles can only travel at one speed, so it's either full speed ahead or stop, with nothing really in between. Similar to rovers, forward and reverse controls are determined by the direction the seat or gravity globe is facing. If you use one of the large rover seats, well, good luck, because it will face sideways, so it's up to you to figure out forward and reverse controls. If you attempt to move your train in a direction where there are no rails, you'll hear a warning tone and see a tooltip advising you that the path is obstructed. This same error will occur if your train is underway and reaches a rail segment that contains another rail vehicle or a junction that is not properly aligned to allow you to continue traveling. If this happens, you'll need to move the rail car that is blocking your path. If a junction was not properly aligned, you can use the inputs we discussed last time to change the junction's configuration, and your train will resume traveling once the junction is configured properly. When a rail car is moving, it will consume power at a rate of 1 unit per second. Unlike most other vehicles, rail cars do not have any internal power storage and instead rely entirely on the power flowing through your rail lines or connected to the storage of the rail car itself. If you attempt to move a rail car placed atop a non-powered rail line, you'll be greeted by a familiar fail condition sound in addition to an error tone from the rail car itself. The power indicator on the sides of the rail car will also flash red, and the tooltip for the rail car will display its status as insufficient power. If there is some power flowing through your rail line, but it's lower than the rail car's power requirements, the rail car will move much more slowly. Additionally, the power indicator on the side will slowly flash yellow, and the status of the rail car will indicate low power, speed reduced. If the power supplied to the rail line meets the minimum rate required by that rail car, it will move at full speed and the power indicator will be green. As you add additional rail vehicles to a train, the power required for that train to move at full speed will increase. The total power required for a train is simply the sum of the power requirements of all the rail vehicles in that train. Therefore, if you have a train with 4 rail cars, it will require power at a rate of 4 units per second. Attaching additional storage to a rail car enables each rail car in a train to haul a massive number of resources or items. The large Tier 3 slot on a rail car is large enough to accommodate nearly any storage item, so you can mix and match all of the available options to find the one that works well for your needs. This means you can also attach power producers to the storage on a rail car, and the power output will be transferred from the rail car along your rail lines and contribute to the total rate of production in the connected power network. You could easily configure storage on a rail car to hold enough power producers to output dozens or even hundreds of units per second. You might even be able to generate enough power to just barely power a single atmospheric condenser. The rail engine is unlocked in the research catalog with 1000 bytes and is created on the media printer from 1 resin, 1 aluminum, and 1 copper. It features a single headlight on the front that illuminates whenever the rail engine is in motion or an Astroneer is seated in it, a built-in seat that you can enter, and a single coupler on the rear of the rail engine for connecting it to rail cars. Similar to rail cars and other vehicles, the rail engine will provide oxygen when you are nearby, even if the rail line it is riding on is not connected to an oxygenator. The rail engine features a power indicator ring on each side that functions the same as the power indicators found on rail cars. The rail engine also has a small Tier 1 activation slot on either side. Since these are activation slots, you can use them to activate connected items, use them as basic storage, or use them to store Tier 1 power producers, which will power your railway and any connected power network. Controlling a rail engine functions exactly as it does for a rail car with a seat attached to its storage, allowing you to move the train forward or backward. Unlike the rail cars, your forward direction will always be determined by the direction the front of the rail engine is facing, so there should be no confusion as to whether you will be moving forward or backward. Rail engines also lack the ability to be started by simply interacting with them in the way you can with rail cars. To get a rail engine moving, you must first enter it, call it via a rail post or rail station, or utilize an automation item to interact with the engine. When fully powered, a rail engine travels at roughly twice as fast as a rail car. This speed increase applies to all rail vehicles in a train that has a rail engine connected at one end. Of course, that increase in speed comes at the cost of increased power draw, with the rail engine consuming power at a rate of 3 units per second. You can connect two rail engines to one another, though they will face in the opposite direction when connected. You can also attach a rail engine at either end of a longer train if you wish. There is not, unfortunately, any benefit found in using more than one rail engine per train. The train will still travel at the same speed as it would with only one rail engine, but it will consume additional power for the extra rail engine. You will also be sacrificing storage space if you use two rail engines, as that will limit you to only having 4 rail cars in your train instead of the 5 you could have had. That is not to say that the rail engine is the limit on how fast the train can travel. No, I'm sorry, thrusters will not make your train faster, but the computer-operated logistics engine, also known as C.O.L.E, can move roughly 50% faster than a rail engine while still consuming power at the same rate of 3 units per second. C.O.L.E is obtained exclusively as a mission reward item, however, so you cannot unlock it in the research catalog, and you cannot create it on any printer. While this may seem like you can only obtain 1 C.O.L.E per instance of the training simulation, there is a way around this apparent limitation. Since C.O.L.E is a reclaimable mission reward, you can have friends join your instance of the training simulation to claim C.O.L.E as well, and those C.O.L.Es will remain in your instance of the training simulation even after your friend has disconnected. We will discuss the mission required to obtain C.O.L.E in our next course. Despite appearing sentient, C.O.L.E functions exactly the same as a rail engine. The rear features a coupler for connecting it to rail cars to form a train, and the sides feature power indicator rings and small Tier 1 activation slots that all function exactly the same as a rail engine. And like all other vehicles discussed today, C.O.L.E will provide oxygen when you're nearby. C.O.L.'s standout characteristic, aside from its increased speed, is found at the front in the form of an animated face that expresses a range of emotions. When idle, C.O.L.E just smiles and blinks a lot. When you enter C.O.L.E, its expression briefly changes to one of surprise. I guess I'd probably be surprised as well if someone wearing a spacesuit suddenly jumped on my back. When in motion, C.O.L.E may appear briefly perplexed, but will quickly resume smiling once underway. And if you activate one of your own emotes while on or near C.O.L.E, it will emit one of several musical whistles and briefly display a heart emote. Pairing our discussion of rail lines from our previous course with today's discussion of rail vehicles means we now have the basics for a fully functional railway. There is one other rail-related item that can add a great deal of functionality over the basics we have already covered: the rail station. You can unlock the rail station in the research catalog for 2,500 bytes and create it on the large printer from 1 copper, 1 quartz, and 2 titanium. When unpacked, it is an extra large, freestanding railway module. It does not create a flat surface when it is placed, meaning you can attach it to any terrain, including vertical surfaces. It features 2 power cable plugs, one on the front and the rear, 2 target pins, 2 activation pin slots, a single large Tier 3 storage slot, and 1 small Tier 1 storage slot. There is also a control panel and an indicator ring. We will break all of this down in a moment, but first, let's look at how to connect a rail station to your rail line. Placing a rail station near an existing rail line should result in a familiar hologram appearing to indicate valid or invalid placement. If there are rail lines to either side of the rail station, you'll see this hologram appear on both sides. As with rail posts, red indicates invalid placement, either because the rail segment exceeds its maximum length or would create an incredibly sharp turn. White indicates a valid placement, and blue indicates a valid placement at the maximum length for a rail segment. If you wish to reposition your rail station, simply pick it up and move it around, ensuring the rail segment holograms indicate a valid placement. Do be sure to clear all rail vehicles off the rail station and any rail segments connecting to it, however, as you will be unable to pick up the rail station if a rail vehicle is present. You can also establish your rail network beginning from a rail station, then extending away from it with rail posts or junctions. As you select a rail post or junction, it will once again create the familiar rail segment hologram from the rail station to the rail post. Once you have valid placement, you can place the rail post, and a rail segment between it and the rail station will be formed. Now, let's take a closer look at the various parts found on the rail station itself. The 2 power cable plugs function as any other power cable plug, allowing you to connect the rail station to a power network. These power cable plugs will also conduct oxygen if the power network is connected to an oxygenator. The large storage may appear to be a standard slot, but it can actually be automated using the settings of the control panel that we will investigate in a moment. The small Tier 1 slot can hold practically any small item, but as the icon just below the slot indicates, its intended use is to hold a beacon so that you can easily locate your rail stations via the compass. The beacons do not inherit any special nav point icon on the compass, however, so it'll be up to you to remember which beacons were placed on a rail station and those that were placed elsewhere. The 2 target pins will send an activation signal anytime a rail vehicle passes over the connection point between the station and the rail line on its respective end. You can see that in this example. As the rail car enters the station, the light I have placed in the right target pin slot will turn on, quickly followed by the one on the left as the rail car passes over the connection point on the left. If I call the rail car back, the lights will turn off in the opposite order as the rail car passes over the respective connection point. If the rail car stops at the station, only one light is turned on since the rail car has not yet passed over the second connection point. The activation pin slots are independent of each other as well. When one is activated, it will send rail vehicles out of the side of the rail station where the slot is located. So the pin on the left sends rail cars out to the left. The one on the right sends them out to the right. We will take a deeper dive into the target pins and pin slots on the rail station in an upcoming discussion of automation logistics. If you interact with the rail station, its tooltip provides information about its current mode and status, along with a prompt to examine. That examine prompt will open the control panel of the rail station, which contains information that we have not seen in any other control panel to date. Let's look at the most basic option presented here, the ready to call status on the right side of the control panel. This is tied to the big green button just below. If you push that big green button, the rail station will call the nearest rail vehicle just as the rail posts do. Pushing the big green button again while the vehicle is traveling to the station will cancel the recall and the rail vehicle will stop in its current location. Doing so will also cause the indicator ring near the top of the rail station itself to flash green. Speaking of this indicator ring, it does not provide any information on power unless the rail line is underpowered or not powered at all. If it is underpowered, the indicator will be yellow. If the rail line is fully powered or, strangely, not powered at all, the indicator ring will be green. The indicator will begin flashing yellow after a few moments of no power, however. If you reopen the control panel, you'll find insufficient power in the status section. The real functionality of this ring lies in its ability to represent how much progress the nearest rail vehicle has made in its journey to the rail station. As the rail vehicle approaches, the illuminated portion of the indicator ring decreases in a clockwise manner. Similar to the indicator on rail post, this indicator ring adjusts dynamically based on the distance between the nearest rail vehicle and the station. If the rail vehicle is relatively close, the ring will decrease quickly. If the vehicle is a great distance from the station, the ring will decrease much more slowly. It should also be pointed out that you can trigger the rail station's call nearest vehicle function by targeting the station itself with a sensor or repeater. Additionally, the call nearest vehicle function does exactly what it says. If your rail network extends from both sides of a rail station and you have rail cars on each of those segments, whichever one is closest to the station will be the one that is called. Looking to the left of the rail station's control panel, we find controls for changing the various modes of the rail station. You can use the large blue buttons at the bottom of the control panel to move through the various options. The stop mode has 3 settings. Stop disabled means the rail station will not stop any vehicles. Stop uncalled cars will stop any uncalled vehicles that were automated from other locations or piloted by you. Just to clarify, an uncalled vehicle in this case refers to any vehicle that was not called by the station itself. Using the call vehicle function on a rail post will have no impact on this setting for the rail station. The stops all cars setting does exactly what it states. It will stop all rail vehicles regardless of how they began moving. The station loading mode has 3 settings as well and works in conjunction with the large Tier 3 storage slot located on the train station. It is worth noting that you can attach additional storage to this large storage slot, and all attached storage will be controlled by the station loading mode settings. The first option, loading disabled, completely disables all automatic loading or unloading. Load stopped cars will move any object stored on the rail station's large storage slot to be loaded on the rail vehicles of a stopped train if there is sufficient space. The third option, unload stopped cars, will unload all items from a train and place them in the storage of the rail station if there is sufficient space. What the station cannot do, however, is direct a rail vehicle to resume traveling on a rail line once loading or unloading has occurred. In fact, there's not even a setting to control a rail vehicle once it has stopped with loading disabled. To accomplish this, you have to turn to additional automation items. We will discuss these options more in depth in an upcoming automation course. Before we wrap up today, I want to urge you to plan ahead for your railway needs. Once you have created railway items, the majority of them cannot be scrapped through traditional methods. You can try all day to drop a rail car into a shredder, but nothing will happen. Additionally, these items cannot be directly destroyed using dynamite. Okay, well that's only partially true. The only way to scrap railway items is to repackage them and then destroy the packaged item with dynamite. Then you can collect debris and place it into the shredder. Now that you know how to create a rail line and how rail vehicles and stations operate, I want to spend just a moment revisiting use cases for rails. We have hinted that you can automate the movement of items, and we will explore that idea further in upcoming courses. We have covered a ton of great uses for rail lines, from extending power and oxygen to safer cave and crevice passage, and even connecting 2 bases together. And of course, once your rail lines are established, they're a great way to travel back and forth between 2 points. But one of the best use cases isn't even one we at Astroneer Academy thought of. This one comes to you by way of fellow recruit Craxon01's comment on the previous Rails course. Clever Astroneers are putting railcars to use as mobile bases, complete with shredders to scrap debris and smelters to take care of refining resources while on the go. Mobile bases have always been a popular pursuit in the training simulation, but since rovers have a tendency to sink through the terrain, you risk losing some valuable resources and items. Rail posts do not perform this disappearing act, however, making them far more superior as a mobile base. Rail lines open up a ton of incredible new opportunities, and you should look for new ways to integrate them into your own adventure. You won't regret it. Today, you have been introduced to various rail vehicles that you can use on your rail network and have explored some of the more basic functionality of the rail station. Next time, in another Rails-related Astroneer Academy Extra, we will explore the long, tedious Rails mission chain and investigate the history of some Astroneers who did some early work on rail technology. Until then, I'm Brandon, reminding you to keep looking to the stars.